I'm playing something almost every week, and sometimes I want to talk about it and give you a vertical slice. So stick with me for some lightning reviews. This week on the chopping block. This week I've been playing the Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days collection on Nintendo Switch. Followers of my previous videos will know that this one was going to obviously be on my buy list. It's Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a compilation title, it allows me to trim my collection, so yeah, this was absolutely one I was going to snatch in spite of my hate-induced priapism for Konami. See my rant on the Silent Hill announcements way back when if you need reference material. In spite of that though, I have to acknowledge that Konami does one thing well, and that's compile and re-release their back catalog. Hell, it's probably one of the main things sustaining their game division these days. Anyway, Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days collection is a port compilation of 16 games from the Game Boy to Game Boy Advance era, several of which we've never gotten stateside before. This is a good thing. The act of officially bringing over old and obscure titles to fans is to be wholeheartedly endorsed. Unfortunately, one of the first issues that most of the games appropriately deal with is the language barrier. However, for some godforsaken reason, one game, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters 6 Expert 2, at the time of writing is only playable in Japanese while every other one has been localized, and I can't read Japanese. I'm sure English for it will get patched down the line, but if that takes place, that once again illustrates the modern practice of release now, patch later game-making culture, along with the first docking of points for Konami in this compilation. The second comes from the rather bare-bones presentation. Unlike the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection, this one is little more than just the games and appears to be the perceived minimum to kick it out the door. Then again, if the porting and games themselves are decent, then it can be forgiven. Are they decent? Well, while I won't be doing an in-depth review of each individual title, I can at least say that in the time I spent with all the games, they at least seem faithful to their original incarnations. I only ever played one or two of the GBA games years ago, which triggered a nice wave of nostalgia when I came across them. Then again, if you're playing this for the card games, then the GBA era is where I'd recommend spending your time if these are all new experiences for you. Like the early seasons of the show, the early video games based off the cards were operating on a much less well-defined rulebook, and as such come across as much simpler and, frankly to me, not as engaging. Then again, for me, having a card pool and rule set from when fusion summoning was the most complicated combo you'd usually see brings back one of my favorite eras of the card game. Now, while improvement of life features are a bit thin on the ground, there is one that I'll praise to the heavens, and that's the option to have all cards unlocked for a particular game from the get-go. However, if you do want the authentic experience, basing your playstyle off whatever you've managed to unlock so far, and experiencing the high of opening a pack with that one card that would make your life just a bit easier, that's the default method of progression. A couple other improvements, such as save states, choices for different aspect ratios, and a rewind function, are all good stuff, but also things that are now considered baseline features for any retro collection. Otherwise, Early Days collection serves as one of what I consider a vital piece of preservation, not only serving to mark different eras of the card game and rule sets, but also ensure that those that might be curious have the option to play the games without having to struggle in finding older and working hardware. But outside of the preservationist or the inquisitive, who is this game for? From the best I can determine, it's an exercise in nostalgia. Yu-Gi-Oh! As a card game is about 25, and as a franchise, it's approaching 30. And I'd place a safe bet that, like me, there are plenty of adults out there that would like to go back and relive those games. For new players or those unfamiliar with the franchise, I'd say Early Days collection is, at best, of limited appeal. The quirky nature of the really early games and their particular rule sets, the basic displays restrained by hardware limitations, and the degree of separation from the modern card game makes this, to me at least, seem like it doesn't really care to ingratiate itself to the modern generation. I'll probably be sinking in quite a few hours into it when I get those pangs of nostalgia, and it gives me a chance to unload some of my original copies for the sake of organization and space efficiency, but it'd be hard to recommend anyone not already familiar with older Yu-Gi-Oh! Media. Then again, this one at least gets a baseline recommendation from me with the hopes that, if it does well enough, Konami will then compile and re-release every single other Yu-Gi-Oh! Game they've ever made. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a motherboard I need to troubleshoot. Hey, thanks for sticking around all the way to the end. Remember that I give away Steam keys with my regular weekly uploads, and all you have to do to enter is leave a comment and have contact info on your YouTube profile. But as always, thanks for watching and keep your head on your shoulders.